With the red, white, and blue proudly flying, you know this train is on a very special mission. Its job today, hauling Medal of Honor recipients as they retrace the route of the great locomotive chase. Coming up, we'll talk about that, dive into some history, and follow the train on the days leading up to this historic event. All that and more is next. It's around 10 a.m. on Tuesday, September 30th, 2025, and CSX's Office Car Special is leaving Atlanta, headed north up the historic Western and Atlantic Main Line. About 45 minutes later, an honor guard is welcoming recipients of the Medal of Honor. They'll attend a special event here at the Southern Museum in Kennesaw before getting on the train. And here it is. In the lead, number 1776, named the Spirit of our Armed Forces. It's the middle of the day on a Tuesday, but there's still a decent crowd out here. This will be the start of a journey covering more than 80 miles to Ringgold, retracing the route of the great locomotive chase during the Civil War. But to appreciate why this trip is happening today, we have to understand what happened way back then. It all started here in Kennesaw, which was once known as Big Shanty. This is where James J. Andrews, a civilian working for the North, and his group of raiders stole a locomotive and headed toward Chattanooga. Their plan? Destroy telegraph wires and tracks along the way in hopes of disrupting Confederate communications and troop movements. It was all set into motion on the morning of April 12, 1862. The men stole this locomotive, named the General. But the train's crew was not going to let them escape. The Confederate pursuers eventually acquired this locomotive, the Texas, and ran it backwards until the end of the chase. Andrews and his men were unable to take on wood and water and eventually had to ditch the General near Ringgold, Georgia. They were all caught, and James J. Andrews and 7 others were executed. And ultimately, several of the men were the very first recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor. But what about their Confederate pursuers? Well, they were hailed as heroes in the South, and 3 of them are buried here at Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta. Back in Kennesaw, let's take a close look at the train that's retracing the route of the great locomotive chase. It's known as an Office Car Special and travels all around the CSX system. This paint scheme is inspired by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Of course, the B&O is one of the many railroads that would eventually make up CSX. I wonder if this is what a modern-day Capital Limited would have looked like. Now, typically trains like these are used for entertaining clients and VIPs and also allowing executives to get a first-hand look at the railroad. Many of the cars here are named for executives who led CSX and its predecessors. And one of the coolest cars here is probably the W. Thomas Rice. Rice was a very successful railroad executive who played an important role in the merger of Seaboard Coastline with the Chessie System, which formed CSX. This car has theater-style seating that faces this giant window that looks out onto the tracks. As you can see, it also has plenty of lighting. Just days before this historic event, the train made a deadhead run to Atlanta. CSX numbers 1, 2, and 3 typically lead the train. They're all ex-Amtrak F40PH-2s. Once the train was in Atlanta, CSX 1776 was added to the front. It's a General Electric ES44AH. As you can see, the locomotive is partially camouflaged and named the Spirit of our Armed Forces. You may remember back in June 2025, the engine led a train loaded with military vehicles headed to the Army's 250th anniversary parade in Washington, D.C. But when it's not participating in special events, CSX uses it in regular freight service. Here it is switching Howell's Yard in Atlanta not long before the event in Kennesaw. Okay, now this is a very rare sight, a railroad actually washing its equipment. The CSX Office Car Special got a thorough cleaning before its trip to Kennesaw and Ringgold. And as you can see, they did a great job. Now, there is a depot here in Kennesaw, but the W&A hasn't seen passenger traffic in a long time. Because of that, a special ramp had to be constructed at this crossing to load the train. And now, with the passengers on board, it's around 1:30 and the train is passing through Ackworth, Georgia. Next stop, Ringgold. You know, more than 160 years after the Great Locomotive Chase and the introduction of the Medal of Honor, members of our military continue to make major sacrifices for this country. This day, this journey, and this train honors them. So, what happened to the engines that were used in the Great Locomotive Chase? Well, both are preserved in Metro Atlanta. The famous General, the one Andrew's Raiders stole, is in Kennesaw at the Southern Museum. And the Texas, one of the locomotives that was used to pursue the Raiders, is preserved at the Atlanta History Center, and they're both worth checking out. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.